part 5 of our ACL prevention, injury prevention webinar is going to be focused on what a proper training program should include, what should it look like, what kind of exercises should be in it. And we kind of go back to saying, well, our training should really look and feel like our sport. And that's what's going to give our body the best chance to feel confident, but also to really enhance performance on the field or on the court. We don't want to be in fake environments. We don't want to train our body one joint at a time when we know it's moving multiple ones at the same time. We don't want to just train in one plane of motion when we know our body moves in all three. So again, it really comes down to what should our training look like. It should really look and feel like and mimic our sport, so our body neuromuscularly has the best chance to perform at its best potential out there. And when we start to develop our programs, we base our movements and our training on the principles of applied functional science. And we'll get into what that means. So applied functional science, and I know this is a big definition, you don't have to memorize it. We'll break it down right now, and we'll simplify it a little bit. But we'll start here. And applied functional science is the convergence of physical, biological, and behavioral sciences. So let's pause. Let's break that down already. Physical really talks about things like gravity, okay, physical sciences. And we know that our core, our knee, our foot is going to be trained a lot differently through gravity, and gravity have a lot different reactions, especially with ground reaction force, from when we're sitting in training or when we're up moving around and lunging or twisting or swinging in our training. So when we talk about the physical sciences, is gravity, how we're training, happening the same way gravity on the field is? And if not, we want to make sure that we make sure it is. Biological includes like muscles, tendons, ligaments, everything really that is our body. Okay, and behavioral talks about our emotions and quite a few other things. But our emotions have a big role in how we feel and how we play, and really how we move. That's definitely a deeper topic, more for another time. But we're going to be focusing more on the physical and biological in the next topic that we're talking about what a proper training program should look like. And let's continue with the definition. So applied functional science is the convergence of physical, biological, and behavioral sciences that consists of principles, strategies, and techniques. Principles, strategies, and techniques. So based on a lot of different studies that have been done on these three sciences and the outcomes that they've had, we've been able to create truths. So things that are consistent through all of these different studies based on all of these sciences. And out of those truths, those are the principles. We can create principles out of all of these different sciences and different studies that have been done. And then based off those principles, we can create strategies and techniques for training. And this training basically includes assessments, conditioning, rehab, injury prevention, that's really practical for any individual regardless of age or ability, and that's really important too. And we'll continue with our next slide. So let's go over some of these principles that our training is going to be based off of. Okay, and out of the studies that have been done, we know that and we've talked a little bit about this, but our training needs to be three-dimensional. Okay, if we go back to that hip and we said what it does when I step forward, where we said it flexes in the sagittal plane, adducts in the frontal plane, internally rotates in the transverse plane. If I lack mobility or lack stability, strength, in any of those motions, or one of those planes of motions, or maybe all of them simultaneously happen together, I leave myself vulnerable. And if my hip's vulnerable, then most likely, because this is connected here, my knee's going to be more vulnerable. So when we look at training, it's again not just one plane of motion. It's all three, and all three a lot of the time simultaneously. We want to train. When we train, it should be a chain of reaction. So again, when I perform a move out on the field, if I swing a baseball bat, that has a chain reaction all the way through from my head down to my foot. You see all these different motions occurring. My knee is doing a lot of twisting. That's chain reaction. So when I train, I better make sure that my core is working together with my knee so that my knee feels safer, and my core is more prepared. If not, again, if we just isolate to one joint and we don't train that neurally, we don't train that chain reaction, neuromuscularly, we're going to be at a disadvantage. Driven. This is a pretty neat one. So back to, we could do the baseball swing, or we could do a lacrosse shot. When I'm going through my lacrosse shot, I'm being driven by my hands. So my body's being driven by my hands, as well as some other things, my eyes definitely included too. That's creating momentum, and this is called top-down momentum, at my knee. And we'll talk about knee because we're talking about ACL. But because of my hands driving like this through my lacrosse shot, all of a sudden my knee felt a really big amount of momentum in the transverse plane coming from the top down. Now, there's also, we could be driven from the lower body, where if I'm running, my foot's the first thing to strike the ground. That means I'm getting a lot of momentum from the bottom up. Our knee has to be able to handle all the different momentums that are occurring in all different planes from the top down of our body and the bottom up. And if it can do that, and if it can handle the different hands driving or the different legs driving, kicking, whatever that may be, whatever our motion is, whatever our task is, we're going to be more successful out there. If we don't train it to handle momentum coming from the top down, or train it to handle momentum coming from the bottom up properly, if I'm stepping to the side or stepping to twist to defend somebody, again, I'm leaving myself vulnerable. Lastly, reaction. And there's other principles too. We chose these four as the ones to speak about today because these four are incredibly important. When we talk about reaction, so a lot of coaches focus just on strength training, which is good. Strength training is fantastic, but a really proper program includes flexibility and mobility, stability and balance, endurance, strength, power, speed, agility, and quickness, which is really under that power umbrella, and reaction. Our sports are mainly power because we're doing things at a very, very high speed. If you look at most strength training, it's slower. So neuromuscularly, again, doesn't prepare us as much. Definitely it plays a huge role in getting us to that power phase, and kind of each phase kind of builds on the other one. But if we don't train power, we're missing out on a lot of explosive ability that we could potentially have. And I want to beat my opponent, so I want to make sure that I train explosively. After I do that strength phase, I want to make sure my next phase is power, or some of those really simultaneously training together. And I better make sure I warm up properly with flexibility and mobility. I better make sure I train properly with endurance so I can last out there with the right technique. And all through those phases, I want my flexibility and mobility to look like what I'm going to be going out there on the field. If I'm statically holding a stretch, that is not preparing my body. It actually, studies showing inhibits our performance out there. So we don't want to statically stretch. We don't want to hold the stretch before training because our body's not standing still out there on the field. We're moving, and we're moving explosively. So I better make sure I'm doing a dynamic warm-up, or warm-up that includes active flexibility. These are the things that become incredibly important when we talk about looking and feeling like our training should look and feel like the moves that we're doing out there. The moves that we're performing in our sport. And we'll continue to move to the next slide. So this is where we kind of can put what we've been talking about into action. And these pictures really just, they can kind of see what we're talking about. And I'll bring up all three that we got here. So if we look at the knee in each of these pictures and all these different athletes, you can see this knee is in front of the foot. This knee is behind the foot. We got this knee that's going to be feeling a lot of transverse momentum. We got a couple more pictures here. We have this knee where we're going toeing in. We have this knee where there's a toe, the toe is toed out underneath it. We have an individual who's got a lot of top-down momentum, so that knee's got to experience a lot of momentum coming from that upper body. We've got bottom-up momentum where she's stepping on the ground and that knee's got to handle that step. We see a knee that's on the outside of the foot, knees that are on the inside of the foot, knees that are twisting. We're seeing them in all these different planes of motion that are going on, and again, a lot of times simultaneously. Part of the body might be running forward, but the other part of the body might be twisting. Okay? So it's got to be able to handle the lower body maybe moving sideways, but but the upper body reaching and twisting down. That creates different momentums and different pressures on the knee that it has to handle, functionally handle. And not only just handle so we don't get hurt, but handle so we can beat our opponent and we can perform out there. So when we take a look at exercises, instead of just doing a squat with toes forward, we're going to make sure our athletes do squats with toes out, right foot forward squats, left foot forward squats, wide squats, narrow squats. We're going to make sure that they do lunges that are sideways, that are transverse lunges. We're going to make sure that they perform exercises where they have their upper body that's maybe challenging their knee in different momentums from the top down, and same thing from the bottom up. We're going to make sure that they're fully prepared, flexibility-wise, endurance-wise, strength-wise, power-wise. And again, that power umbrella includes that speed, agility, quickness component in all three planes of motion in any which position that they could be put in. And you'll notice that, especially here, she's on one leg. In any sport that involves running, you're on one leg for most of the time. So single leg training becomes huge, and not just an up and down squat, but can we start to drive the leg and the knee in different positions and twisting on one leg, and are we able to control it in those different planes of motion? Then are we able to do hops or leaps or jumps in side-to-side hop or twisting hop? Are we able to control those different momentums, again, either from the top down or bottom up? We don't just want to be in one plane of motion, a fake environment that's just really not authentic. We want to get as authentic as possible, look and feel like our sport. And this shows us exactly why. I don't think in one of these pictures is the knee really just tracked over the foot, although that does happen sometimes. We need it to be prepared for when it goes inside, outside, twist right, twist left, as well as going up and down, and then of course all three at the same time, because that's usually what's going on. So now we're going to go into an example assessment in part 6 of our webinar, and this is going to basically if an athlete was to come in and see us, maybe what we would go through and what we might see and try and look at.